Howdy there, friends, family, adversaries, ladies, gentlemen, and non-binary folks. Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Riley Constantine, and today we are talking about the appeal of Marvel Comics. And no, not the appeal of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, because that'll be a different video. This episode just applies to the comics, and yeah, it should be fun. I'm gonna cut now. Marvel has always been my superhero comic book company of choice. Whether it be the epic comic book storylines like Infinity Gauntlet, immersive video games like Spider-Man PS4, accessible and enjoyable films in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, or cool villains like the Green Goblin or whatever the hell MODOK is. I have always adored this Disney-owned juggernaut of a comic book company. Throughout my childhood and young adulthood, the caped escapades of heroes like Spider-Man or Daredevil captured my imagination through their heroic actions, and while I did enjoy comics by Marvel's rival competitor DC Comics as well, Marvel Comics were always my main. They were a constant staple in my hectic childhood and young adulthood, and for that, I loved them. And there are many reasons as to why many Marvel fans like myself find the comics so appealing. The books have great artwork, awesome battles between good and evil, and detail-rich lore, even if a bit labyrinthine, that is a treasure trove for longtime readers. In essence, Marvel comic books work as escapist superhero fantasy. They are fun. However, it is the great character work that exemplifies Marvel's core appeal the most. Even more so than being just fun escapist fantasy books, it really is the characters that truly make Marvel a comic property worth reading. Allow me to be upfront here. Marvel's appeal is due to the relatability of their protagonists. Despite all the cool, fantastical, and outlandish scenarios that Marvel heroes find themselves in on an issue-by-issue basis, Marvel's primary allure is due to the character development of its heroes. Beyond the cool power sets of iconic heroes like Spider-Man, Captain America, Iron Man, Howard the Duck, and Wolverine, Marvel heroes all have their own strengths, weaknesses, and personality quirks that allow them to be relatable. With Iron Man's overinflated ego, Thor's pompous bravado, and Deadpool's love for explosive diarrhea-inducing chimichangas, Marvel heroes are flawed. They have numerous personal inadequacies that let them be four-dimensional characters, and as a result, the reader can easily empathize and sympathize with these heroes. Furthermore, Marvel's character work is especially noticeable when you compare them to the superheroes in the DC universe, aka Marvel's caped comics competitor featuring characters like Superman and Wonder Woman, which are Olympian-esque gods that really contrast with Marvel's more fallible style of hero. On one side, you have DC heroes who are even more powerful than their Marvel counterparts. Heroes like Superman and Wonder Woman are basically the equivalent of living gods. They are incredible, perfect, and damn near flawless. Hell, even Batman, a mere mortal without superpowers, is overpowered due to his genius intellect and in how he is capable and inventive enough to defeat superheroes who are way more powerful than him, despite how they could snap his cock off like a twig. Furthermore, many DC superheroes have weaknesses that are more elemental in nature. While DC heroes have their own personality quirks that villains can exploit, many of the DC Pantheon's most notable weaknesses are in how they are more susceptible to different physical elements, i.e. Superman's weakness is kryptonite or the red sun, Green Lantern is weak to the color yellow, which admittedly was retconned to symbolize fear in the DC universe, but fucking still, it's the color yellow, and Aquaman must worry about becoming dehydrated at all times, which must really suck for him. Marvel superheroes, on the other hand, are still powerful, but not necessarily godlike, with the exception of Thor, obviously. Compared to DC heroes, the power sets of Marvel heroes are rarely overpowered. They are superhuman beings, more so than picturesque gods. In fact, Marvel heroes are more defined by their flaws. Faults like how Iron Man is the literal embodiment of hubris, Captain America is a man lost in time, and in how the Incredible Hulk's temper tantrums are more destructive than a whole frat house hammered on Jägermeister. Whatever the case, Marvel heroes are very human. They all have personal failings inherent to their character deficiencies, and in order to grow as superheroes, Marvel characters must overcome their own imperfections as people. They must learn from their mistakes to become better heroes. These moral blemishes ensure that Marvel heroes are more relatable when compared to DC heroes. Even in the most ludicrous, fantastical, out-of-left-field scenarios that Marvel Comics can chuck at the reader, Marvel heroes like Kitty Pryde, aka the best X-Men, can leave an emotional impact on the reader due to their more human characterization, and when contrasted with the more idealistic, perfect, overpowered, godlike style of superhero inherent to the DC pantheon, Marvel heroes are noticeably more fallible. They have a more human touch. Hell, even the Marvel superheroes that are robots or artificial intelligence like Vision have a heart and soul. And while sure, DC heroes have their own intricacies and characteristics, they overall are not as imperfect as Marvel superheroes are. Marvel Comics can really hit home when the character work is firing on all cylinders, and The Amazing Spider-Man is probably the best example of this. Out of every Marvel superhero, Spider-Man best exemplifies Marvel's appeal. Arguably Marvel's most beloved and endearing hero prior to the advent of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Spider-Man is adored for his snarky wit, sharp intelligence, and nifty super abilities. But even beyond those reasons, Spider-Man has endured in popularity in the pop cultural zeitgeist because he is extremely relatable. Out of all of the uncountable sympathetic heroes in Marvel's roster, Spider-Man reflects Marvel's appeal the most. In fact, he is the perfect embodiment of how imperfect Marvel superheroes are, and is very representative of Marvel's style of likably flawed heroes. This fact is evident in Peter Parker's never-ending identity crisis. In the comics, Peter Parker and his alter ego of Spider-Man are at constant war with each other. Even though he has nifty superpowers, all Peter wants to do is live a normal life, work a shitty job, get happily married, and then get his marriage annulled by Mephisto like the rest of us. But his duty, i.e. with great power comes great responsibility, regularly prevents him from being happy. After all, saving New York City from the clutches of the Vulture or the hentai fetishist Dr. Octopus makes Peter's personal life suffer, and as a result, Peter Parker is often resentful of his powers because they prevent him from having a fun, normal teenage and young adult life. Hell, Peter even sometimes hates his obligation to don the spider suit itself because it makes his personal life suffer. He doesn't always want to battle supervillains, save people from burning buildings, or get chastised by Bruce Campbell every day. Though to be fair, #goals. No, he often views his commitment as Spider-Man as a major inconvenience for his deep need to have a normal life. Due to his responsibility to be heroic, Peter misses important dates, classes, and events because he's tied up literally tying people up. And despite how Peter's powers are awesome, they can make him utterly miserable because they interfere with his regular life, to the point that sometimes he just wants to quit and not even be Spider-Man anymore. He wants to live his life benefiting himself more so than others. In other words, the Amazing Spider-Man can be amazingly selfish at times. And yet, Peter still does the right thing anyway. He will still sacrifice his own social life for the greater good of helping others, because it isn't just Spider-Man's abilities that make him a hero. No, Peter's a hero because he's a regular guy that fate gifted with great power, and he uses that said great power to aid his fellow man, even when he really doesn't want to, because it is the right thing to do. Spider-Man is emblematic of Marvel's style of imperfect superheroes. Like the wall crawler, heroes such as Iron Man, Thor, and the Hulk have numerous personal failings, yet they commit to being heroes and using their powers for good despite how life throws them some inopportune curveballs. And due to their triumphs and trials, readers can strongly resonate with these characters. They are just a bunch of schlubs like the rest of us, but with superpowers, and thus they are more personal and relatable. Marvel heroes are like us. They are human. And that ultimately is the appeal of Marvel Comics. Thanks so much for watching. And with that, I'd like to thank my patrons, especially my high tier ones in Slasher of Veils, Mom, and David Devlin. Thank you so much for supporting what I do. Love y'all.